All right, everybody, we are now going to learn about knife, axe, and saw safety. So the first part we're going to talk about is a really easy one, the pocket knife. So first thing you have to know is that the BSA does not allow knives without a sheath. So the sheath is this protective covering, so I could close this knife up and it won't be a harm to myself or anyone else. If you have a knife like this, where the blade is just out and you can't fold it, then that is not allowed in the BSA. Another good rule of thumb, all you need is your blade to be about the size of your palm. You don't need it to be any larger than that. You're not going to be cutting anything crazy. So a blade that's the size of your palm and folds down into the sheath is really important. So some really easy proper knife safety. You always, when you're cutting, want to make sure you're cutting away from yourself. So if you are carving something, you want to be cutting away, not towards yourself. If you cut towards yourself, if something were to give, you're more likely to cut your hand. And you don't want to do that because it's going to be uncontrolled and you could end up cutting yourself really deeply. You also want to make sure nobody is around you. So if you could reach your arm out and your knife can touch it, then if somebody's near you and your hand just happens to slip, they could get hurt. So you want to make sure that they are at least farther than an arm's length away from you. So that's what we call your blood circle. So keep them away from that. When you pass a knife, you want to make sure to close it, hand it to the person, and wait until they say, "Thank you, I have it." So that way you know that they have it in their hands. If you have a knife like this that you're using maybe in your camp kitchen or even in your own kitchen at home, then what you want to do is actually grab it by the blade, because you're going to have more control over this and you're going to make sure then that you don't accidentally stab the other person. You are going to hand it over, and again, you're going to wait until they say, "Thank you, I have it," and that is when you are going to release it. So that's another really important thing there. You never want to throw a knife. You never want to carry it when it's open. All of that stuff could lead to injury. So just make sure that you're always being safe with your knife. Another really important thing too is to make sure that your knife is always sharpened. If you try to cut with a dull knife, you're going to be putting a lot more force into that cut, and that is a higher risk for injury. So in order to sharpen your knife, what you want to do is you want to get a little sharpening stone like this. And you again are always cutting away from you, so you put the blade down at a 30-degree angle and you're just going to go like this, just kind of slide it along, make sure your fingers aren't in the way, get both sides of it evenly. You want to make sure you do this the same amount of times on each side, and when that blade stops shining, that's when you know that it is no longer dull. If it's shining, that means there's a larger surface area, and that's going to be a dull blade. If it's not shining, that's because a sharp blade is very thin and it's not going to be able to have that shine. Again, if you're in your own kitchen and you need to sharpen your knife, they sell these really awesome sharpening tools that are really easy to work. All you do is you slide your knife in, blade side down, you squeeze it and you pull it out. And you're just going to do that a couple times. You want to do it very carefully, especially when you put it back in, to make sure that you don't hurt yourself, but that's going to sharpen your knife right up. When you're all done sharpening your knife, you're just going to take a little piece of cloth or paper towel and you're just going to wipe it off. Now to clean your knife, what you want to do is get either a toothpick or even a Q-tip. So the toothpick, you'll want to have a little bit of cloth twirl around the end, and that's why I prefer just using a toothpick or a Q-tip. And you're going to wet it with a little bit of oil. Once you have that oil on it, you're just going to lightly smear it on both sides and kind of spread it evenly. That oil is going to clean this off. The only time that you're not going to do that first is if you have food in here. So if you were just cutting potatoes or anything like that around your campfire with your camp knife, then you're going to want to clean it first with soapy water. If you're cleaning with soapy water, you just, of course, like you would clean a knife at your house, make sure the blade is facing away from you, and you're kind of just going to go like this with a washcloth that is soapy around it. And then, of course, again, you could take this, lightly dab it with the oil, and you could even do the inside here. That's where that toothpick might be a little bit better, is to get some of those inside parts. So if you see here, I've got some gunk on there already. So that's going to really get all of that inside and make sure your knife stays nice and clean so that you don't have to worry about contaminating anything. Okay. We're also going to learn about axe safety. So since I'm kind of demonstrating here, I've got my toy axe with me, but I have my real axe behind me, so I can bring that out so you can see a real axe.
what we're gonna do first, before we even start chopping our wood, is set up our area. So what you wanna do is grab your axe by the head, and of course be careful when you do this because you don't wanna accidentally slip and cut yourself. And you're gonna extend your arm and hold it out and do a circle. So that area is your blood circle now with your axe. So you do not want anyone coming in within that area. Your best bet is to rope off that area so people know that you are cutting with an axe and not to come that way. If you don't have rope, you could even maybe try stacking rocks and things like that just to define that area so no one comes near you. If you lose control of that axe, that's the extent of pretty much where it's going to go, that it could hurt someone. And you definitely don't want an incident with an axe because that is a much larger blade than the knife that we were using. You also want to make sure that you have closed-toed shoes on. Leather boots are probably your best bet because if you do slip and you come down on your leather boot, that's not going to be an issue. But if you slip and you come down on a sandal, you might lose a toe. So make sure you're wearing closed-toed shoes, leather boots if you can. You want to make sure that you have a stable surface to cut on as well. So up here, I'm in my backyard, so I don't have a tree stump or anything like that to cut on like I would at my campsite, but I've got this little bit of a raised platform and cement that I place my logs on. So I've got my nice flat log here, I place it on the nice flat cement, and that makes it a lot easier for me and safer for me to cut this wood. To hold the axe, you're going to put one hand above the other, and you kind of come above your head and you come down as hard as you can onto that. With both hands, you're in full control. You never want to come down with one hand. You always want to have two hands on the axe so that you are in full control. So keep two hands on the axe at all times. And then the last rule, you never, ever, ever want to swing an axe with a piece of wood attached to it. So sometimes you might come down and your strike wasn't hard enough, or maybe your axe is a little bit dull, so it only goes part way through the wood. You want to be very, very careful, and you want to remove the axe from the wood. Never try to swing it back with the wood attached to it and come down on the concrete, because what's going to happen is when you swing that back, that log's coming with it, and if it's just a little bit loose, that log is going to fly backwards and it's going to hurt somebody. You can pause it.
I don't know, just go. Okay, you're good.
Okay, to sharpen your axe, you're going to want to put it down like this. So this is the butt end of the axe head. You want to have it butt end down, and this way your blade is facing upwards. In your camp equipment, you will have some sort of clamp to clamp this down. Again, I'm in my backyard, so I don't have one with me, but you would clamp this down to keep it nice and tight. So that way you could use both hands to sharpen the axe. You don't have to worry about holding it down. You don't have to worry about it slipping, especially if you've got other things going on around you. And you're gonna have, again, your blade here and come along and just sharpen it the same way that you were sharpening your knife. You want to do both sides the same amount of times, otherwise you might have an uneven blade. And once you see that that blade stops reflecting light, that means that it's got that razor thin, sharp edge, and you're good to go.
Let's take a quick look at how you would properly use a camp saw. A saw is a really helpful tool for cutting firewood, sawing tree limbs, or clearing a tree that has fallen across a trail. When sawing for firewood, brace the piece of wood against some kind of solid support and use long, smooth strokes. Let the weight of the saw pull the blade into the wood. Just like your pocket knife, you should take good care of your saw. Protect the blade with a sheath. You can actually make one yourself by cutting open an old garden hose and fitting it over the blade. When the blade gets too dull, just replace it.